Welcome back, everybody, to For New Eyes Only, the James Bond retrospective podcast where I am watching the movies for the first time.
I am Simmons, Nathan Simmons.
My number 2, I am Josh Browning.
I've always wanted to be someone's number 2.
You're my number 2 now, buddy.
Thanks, bro. Yeah, man. Thunderball.
We're back with Thunderball, and we had a little break there. Unfortunately, I had some life stuff happen, and our Goldfinger episode came out a little late, but we're back on the horse. We're back talking about Bond.
Back underwater.
Yeah, this time we're not on the water, like in From Russia with Love. This time, this time Terrence was like, let's go underwater for this.
What if Dr. No was wetter?
So yes, Thunderball, obviously a first time watch for me, one that you haven't watched very much, you said, right?
It's not one that I go back to very often. Yeah, I mean, we'll get to it as we go through, but Thunderball was one that I think I dug a lot as a kid. I've mentioned on the show before, I used to just marathon these whenever they'd play them on TV. And I think Thunderball was one that always grabbed me because of the underwater locations. I was a big water kid. I don't know if that's a thing. But this was one that I haven't revisited a ton in my adult life since I got the Blu-ray set a couple years ago. I think I've only watched it once when I was just going through the series. But I was excited to revisit this one because it's just one I don't have a huge connection to. And I feel like, again, I'm kind of alienating myself from the audience because here's the guy who thinks Goldfinger is fine saying Thunderball, the most successful Bond movie when adjusted for inflation, is like pretty good.
I don't want to play my hand too early, but I will go ahead and say, like, this one did a little more for me than Goldfinger did.
Right on, man. I really enjoyed it. My biggest gripe with it is that it's very much a travelogue. You know what I mean? Like it feels like the plot is secondary to the action or the carrying. It's just there to carry Bond forward through a series of misadventures.
Yeah, this one. We're kind of digging into it already, but I found this one to be a lot more simplistic than the last few we've watched.
It is. Yeah. I think it's really easy to follow, which I was kind of surprised by because, especially after Goldfinger, where there's all these, and From Russia with Love, where there's all these double blinds and secret agents. And also I'm paying these gangsters, but also I'm doing this thing. This one is very much like, hey, Bond, go get those things. And I kind of love that about it.
So last month we talked about Goldfinger, and I had my prediction for what Thunderball was going to be, or what the plot of Thunderball was going to be.
Sure.
And I believe it was Bond's got a new lady in his life, and he's taking her to the Thunderball.
Yeah, putting on his Sunday best and going to the Thunderball.
And little does he know, his female friend is not what she seems, and the Thunderball has something to do with Spectre.
Which is a pretty good guess, especially considering the word Thunderball happens one time in this movie.
Well, one time in the movie, it also is the song in this one.
Of course.
Which I have a comment about, which we'll get to here shortly, but
I'm excited about the song. Yeah.
Thunderball. Nathan.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what Thunderball is about in 7 seconds or less?
Sure thing. Count me off.
Let me get the trusty old stopwatch here, and I'm going to go 3, 2, 1, go.
Sure thing.
3, 2, 1, go.
After 2 nuclear devices are stolen by Spectre, Bond must contend with the villainous Largo and the beautiful Domino.
Boom. 6.71 seconds.
I'm cutting it close every single time. Every time I think I got a little bit more. Yeah. I mean, like like you said, this is a pretty straightforward little ditty. But what's wild is there's a lot of controversy behind the scenes of Thunderball. I don't know if you know about any of this.
Well, that's why I have you, my trusty Bond fanatic, who has all of the background there.
Right, that's the point of the show. I forgot.
I typically do try to do as much background research as I can to be able to be on your level, but unfortunately this time I didn't get quite as much time to dig into the BTS stuff.
Sure.
But I did notice Terrence Young back behind the camera.
Yeah, his final Bond film, actually, from the first two movies. Yeah. Yes, after Guy Hamilton directed the preceding film, he was just basically like, I'm beat. Can Terrence come back and do this one? And so he did. Yes, Thunderball, directed by Terrence Young, written by Richard Mybom and John Hopkins. Music, of course, by John Barry, starring Sean Connery, Claudine Auger, Adolfo Celli, and Luciana Paluzzi. This was a huge movie, and it almost didn't happen because in the late 1950s, Ian Fleming became friends with a filmmaker and screenwriter named Kevin McClory, who he was talking with about making a Bond movie. This was this would have been the first Bond film. And so they wanted to develop a new story for the screen. And so basically what happened was they started coming up with these ideas, which originally was about a hijacked airplane full of celebrities, which I love that concept, and I would love for them to go back to it at some point, but legal issues probably prevent that from happening at this point,
right?
And McClory was like, no, I want to do something that involves water. So that's how we get here.
You got water in this one, my friends.
Boy, howdy, do you ever have water. So over the course of a few months, they come up with all these ideas. They create Spectre together. They come up with the character of Ernst Stavro Blofeld. Like, all this stuff kind of starts to solidify, which we will see in the movies that are laying the groundwork right now. And then basically things go south when Kevin McClory puts out a movie called The Boy and the Bridge, which Fleming was really excited about. And then the movie didn't do well with critics or audiences. And then Fleming just kind of ghosts Kevin McClory for a while. Like, he's just like, oh, no, thank you. But so even though he wasn't involved very much, McClory brought in a screenwriter named Jack Whittingham to help kind of flesh out their ideas. And eventually, while Fleming is kind of traveling the world working on like his nonfiction writing, all of this stuff, McClory sends him a screenplay called Longitude 78 West. Not the most exciting of titles.
I don't think I would be jumping at the bit to go see that one in the theater.
Right. But you could see like that being very much like kind of a boilerplate thriller novel from this era. But so Fleming was like, okay, I like this script. I'm going to change the title to Thunderball, which is a reference to a mushroom cloud. It's kind of according to trivia I've read, it's the essentially what U.S. military would refer to as the peak of a mushroom cloud.
I was really wondering where
it's an evocative name, right?
Yeah, where the title came from, and you know, my judge of what I thought thought it was going to be in the movie. I was like, how are they going to play this title into this movie? And
right. And so essentially, at this point in it's early 1960, Ian Fleming says, oh, I'm going to take this screenplay to MCA and we're going to make your movie. You're going to be a producer. Instead, he writes the novel Thunderball using the screenplay.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Dick move. But honestly, knowing what little I know of Ian Fleming so far.
Yeah.
It strikes me as something he'd do.
And be like, this is fine that I'm doing this. But yeah, he writes Thunderball, gets that published, and as he's going to get it published, McClory files an injunction to try to keep the book from being published. It fails, But as the movies are coming out and he's realizing they're using things that I co-created, like Spectre, which was meant to replace Smersh in the world of the novels, in the world of the films, he files a lawsuit against Ian Fleming in 1963. They go to court together. Fleming has a heart attack during the proceedings, like around that time, and eventually says, yes, I basically, I took all of these story elements, put them in the novels. I fucked up. And they settle out of court. And Fleming ends up having a heart attack and dying at the age of 56 in 1964. So this is the first Bond film that is made and released post Fleming's death.
Wow.
Because of all of the legal entanglements, McClory retained the screen rights to Thunderball. That's why this movie during the opening title sequence has, based on the novel by Ian Fleming, based on a story by Jack Winningham, Ian Fleming, and Kevin McClory.
I noticed that in the credits because usually it was by Ian Fleming and all of that. And this time I saw the 2 extra names and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what Nathan will tell me about this.
Yes. And so because of all these legal entanglements, Eon's production starts to kind of phase Spectre out after this. There's still kind of a looming presence for a few more films, but it became more of a thing of like, how much can we get away with without paying Kevin McClory? And so it's this weird thing where like, there's a certain section of the fan base that has a real beef with Kevin McClory for kind of throwing a wrench in the gears of the movies. But in my opinion, I'm like, get that fucking bag. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's how I feel when someone complains about, Bill Finger's estate sued for the rights to sue Batman. I'm like, absolutely they should. But
IP is IP, my friends.
Yeah. So this is a movie that has a lot of baggage to it, even before The Gun Barrel, which features Sean Connery for the first time. That's the first thing I noticed watching it. I was like, holy shit, it's actually Sean Connery. And he's got a good move, right? He doesn't kind of do that little, like, he does a little bit of a turn, but he doesn't do the trip like the stuntman from the first few.
The biggest thing about the ones before this is when he does that turn or that trip or whatever it is, he uncenters himself from the barrel.
Yes, that was the thing that drove you crazy about it, right? Like it's not even. So this was really fun to like. I was like, oh yeah, this is the first time we see Connery in the Gun Barrel, and then smash cut to a funeral that we think is for James Bond.
Yeah, that was the first thing I said. Jenny and I were watching it together. It cut to that, and I was like, holy shit, James is dead.
Yeah. But it doesn't give us enough of that, right? Like it's almost immediately taken away.
And I love that I forget who it is that's with Bond up on the balcony here, but she even says,
the coffin, it has your initials, JB.
At this moment, rather him than me.
At least you've been saved the effort of removing him. Colonel Bouvard passed away in his sleep, so they tell me.
And we get the first of many moments in this movie that, like, it's so funny to me every time I remember that you've watched Austin Powers before these movies. Yeah. So him socking the shit out of that widow.
The first thing I thought.
That's not your mother. It's a man, baby.
That's a man, baby. And he says, you shouldn't have opened the car door yourself.
Yeah. Which is a nice little observation on Bond's part. That kind of gave
Bond
that
being
guy
a detective,
away.
which I always dig.
But yes,
this fight is great.
Oh, but when he comes in the room, we think it's a she, and he just fucking decks her. I was like, whoa! And then everything goes down. I was like, oh, okay, this is funny.
Oh, right, it's a dude in drag, and he thought he had snuck out of his own funeral, and he starts choking out a man wearing stockings. He like he's got like the fireplace poker and like crushes his larynx with it. In the script, he strangled him with his bra, which I think is so funny.
Would have been so much better.
Incredible, right? And here's like, there's so many moments in this movie where Bond is such a little stinker. As we would say on Silver Linings, he's the scamp of the film. But when he's leaving the room and he's about to get attacked by all these guards, he stops to grab flowers out of a vase and throw them on the corpse.
That was my next comment. I was like, what the fuck is he doing? Like, he could have gotten away clean had he not done that, and nobody would have ever known the better that he was in that room. Well, they would have known he was in the room, but they wouldn't have seen him leaving the room to the rooftop where there is just a fucking rocket jetpack waiting for
there. Yeah, I didn't. So this is the scene that I remember the most from being a kid watching this was the jetpack, and then. But watching it now, I'm like, where the fuck did that come? That's not under your jacket. That's not, unless you placed it on this Spectre agent's rooftop.
No well-dressed man should be without one.
Yes, very practical.
And according to production designer Ken Adam, that was a functional jetpack.
It reminds me of something I saw years ago when Michael Jackson was touring the Bad album. Or no, I'm sorry, not Bad. The one after that, the one with
Batter.
Shit, the one that had all the hits in the 90s on it. I can't remember. Dangerous.
Oh, okay.
When he was touring on Dangerous, the finale of his show was him strapping on a jetpack and flying out of the stadium.
So Bond should have been like hee and like.
Now I want to see Sean Connery doing the crotch grab like Michael Jackson.
Insane. I mean, it wouldn't be the creepiest thing he does in this movie.
No.
But this sequence is great, even though it makes no sense for the jetpack to be there. What it reminded me of was Kenny Powers in Eastbound and Down, just fucking around in the lake. But we get gadgets right away. Jetpack, the Aston Martin has a bullet shield, shoots water jets on these dudes who are attacking them. And then that takes us, it's a good transition into the credit sequence.
I think I'm going to have to start paying more attention to the credit sequences. Because as we get into this movie, and as we've already spoken about, a lot of water in this one.
Sure.
And I didn't put two and two together when you're seeing all of this water stuff in the opening sequence. I was like, I didn't put two and two together. I was like, okay. But yeah, like I should have known from watching.
Well, and that's the thing. So Maurice Bender came back as the opening titles designer, and as these movies go on, they really do evolve to include more of the plot. I mean, the first movie we had. Three blind mice and just random kind of like dancing, animations. And then we had in From Ocean with Love, we have the belly dancers, but it doesn't really factor into the story aside from the Romany camp. And
which doesn't need to be in the movie at all, but
which doesn't need to be in the which we've also, we said you could lose 20 minutes from the movie and it's fine. And then Goldfinger, we get Gold Ladies, which is pretty cool. And then this one I think is the first one that's really like, let's lean into the story of this movie, the visual themes of this movie. And speaking of themes, Tom Jones doing Thunderball. What are your thoughts?
He strikes like Thunderball.
He sure does, doesn't he?
I was like, what does that mean?
Yeah. Well, so we went from very literal, like he loves gold, to like a lot of there's a lot of metaphor in this song. So there's a great apocryphal story where Tom Jones says he asked the engineer in the studio, what does he strikes like Thunderball mean? And the guy goes, I don't know. And then supposedly when that last note that he hits, he passed out. Like he's told this story a few times where he's like, I held it so long that I like got dizzy and like fell over. This isn't my fave Bond theme. It's when I've got my playlist on, it's not one that I listen to a whole bunch. I think it's fun, but it's kind of forgettable to me.
As much as I didn't dig on Goldfinger the movie, I like the Goldfinger theme much
Great
more.
Theme.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I gotta say, I need to send you this because this was the first time post Goldfinger where Bond is a thing. So people are actually vying to do the Bond theme now to the point where I'm going to send you this link. fellow by the name of Johnny Cash sent in a song to the studio, like without them asking for it.
Wow.
Just like, I recorded I heard y'all are doing a Thunderball. I'll see if you like this song. So this is I want you to listen to just a couple seconds of this, because this is clearly written by somebody who has no idea what the plot of the movie is, but also really wants to write a Thunderball theme, and it slaps. It's a Johnny Cash song through and through.
Fury of the mighty Thunderball.
Honestly, it makes just as much sense as the one we got.
Yeah. Oh, and I love it.
I would totally rock that song.
As we go along with these movies, it's so fun to find the rejected Bond themes. Well, I know you know about one of them.
We've talked about the Radiohead one many times, and I think that song is phenomenal.
It rules. But yeah, it's a fun song. And then we leave the credits, we immediately meet Emilio Largo parking like an asshole to show what a villain he is.
I love that shot though of him pulling up on the street and you can see the Eiffel Tower down at the end.
Yes.
That's a really cool shot.
Well, this movie does the thing that I loved in From Russia with Love, where we see how Spectre lives. You know what I mean? Like, just like MI6 has its little dummy corporations and Universal Exports and stuff like that, Largo walks through this philanthropic office where they're helping rehome people to go to his evil lair, because Spectre is literally evil MI6.
It looks like he has the same interior designer as Goldfinger.
He does. I mean, yes. Yeah. And much like Goldfinger, I find Largo to be kind of underwhelming as a villain.
I'm obviously thinking about number 2 from Austin Powers.
Sure.
Where, I'm a huge Rob Lowe fan. I know Rob Lowe played the younger version of him in the second one, but yeah, I mean, I love when we get in here. Yes. And it seems like Spectre is behind all major criminal activity in the world.
All crime in the world. Yes. They're literally having their finance meeting. They're in charge of robbing trains. They're helping kill politicians. And there's a cut for all of them in each of it. I love this bit. And we're reintroduced to number 1, Blofeld, who has not been named quite yet.
Yep.
Still played by Anthony Dawson, who played Professor Dent in Dr. No, also doubled as him in From Russia with Love. And Largo is played by Adolfo Celli, and he's voiced by Robert Rietti, who voiced a bunch of characters in the Bond movies, like Professor Strangways in the first movie. Right. There's a lot of that going on here. Domino is voiced by Nikki van der Zyl, who voiced Sylvia Trench and Ursula Andress and like all these other characters. It's pretty insane how no one has their own voice in these early movies except for like 3 actors.
I wanted to ask you, when do we start seeing the downgrade of the overdubbing in the Bond movies?
Honestly, I think it's probably around the Moore era. I think it's mainly just a consequence of how they had to film these, because they're filming them on location. They're filming them out in the middle of the ocean or in like crowded streets. So there's a ton of ADR that's like necessary for them to be able to run these film crews. But it's fun because when you really get to know these movies, you're listening for those same voices. Like it hit me this watch that I'm like, oh fuck, Largo has the voice of Tiger Tanaka from You Only Live Twice. Like, so I'm very excited to hear him again next month. But yeah, and meanwhile, so they're talking about all of their ill-gotten gains. Bond is killing them one by one. Bouvard, who dies in the opening credits, was number 6. And meanwhile, we're learning they have a sense of honor among thieves, as Blofeld tells us. Spectre is a dedicated fraternity whose strength lies in the absolute integrity of its members. And he shocks a guy who's embezzling from them in another very Austin Powers bit.
Look what you did to Mr. Bigglesworth!
That was the other thing that I really am I'm starting to have a newfound respect for the Austin Powers movies.
Yes. They are loving homages to James Bond.
Just how many, like, they pull something from every Bond movie we've watched so far.
Yeah. If you're enjoying those parallels, you're gonna lose your mind with next month's movie, I think. Like, I'm so excited. It's a weird watch, but I'm already getting hyped for it. But yeah, I do love that he kills this guy who's embezzling from him, and everyone just kind of straightens their ties or loosens their ties, like, because they're all nervous around Blofeld,
right?
And Largo starts to reveal part of their master plan to steal nuclear devices. But we don't get the full picture yet because we got to shoot over to the rehab clinic, right?
Where their man in the middle, or their undercover Spectre agent, just so happens to be
Count Lippy.
Just so happens to be where Bond is having a nice little spa day,
getting a little massage. So it's clearer in the novel and in the unofficial remake of this movie that Bond has been sent there to, like, rest up after his latest adventure. But yeah, here it's literally just like, oh, this is where villains and spies go to get their massages.
And it struck me as funny because I was like, oh, the villain's here and Bond's here. And then later when Bond goes back to MI6, it's like, oh, here's where I'm getting my information about what we're going to be doing.
And he's like, oh, I actually saw this body. It is very coincidental, right?
But it still takes me back to Goldfinger, where he's just vacationing in Florida, having a grand old time. Oh,
good thing I'm in Miami when this gambling ring breaks out. Yeah.
And it's like, you know, I would think as Bond, you would have to start thinking anytime you go anywhere, M has an ulterior motive for him.
I wish we had another one of those scenes where M is just like, well, I sent you there because I knew Count Lippy was going to be there overseeing a plastic surgery.
Well, I will say, I mean, this is later in the movie, but I will say when Bond does get to MI6 and they're meeting with all the other 00s and they get the demands from Spectre.
Love that stuff. Yeah.
The fucking look that M gives Bond as he walks in that room.
Now that
I was like, this movie was another, like, I brought it up in Goldfinger with M and Q, but this one too, like later when Q comes into the picture, they are fucking done with Bond.
Everyone hates James Bond in this movie. It's pretty insane. Like, so yeah, Bond sees Colonel Lippy has like a spy tattoo. He thinks it's a sign of one of the Tongs. Like, he's like, it's a crime tattoo.
Calls the Red Dragon tattoo.
Yeah. Right. It's I thought it was the greatest hero on earth, or greatest American hero like symbol, because I'm an idiot. But yeah, Moneypenny, there's some fun patter with Moneypenny. And
oh man. When he says, I'm going to have to bend you over my knee. Like, that was one thing, and I wasn't expecting it. But Moneypenny, she's into it, man.
And like, that is the key. He knows she's into it.
It is Moneypenny's dream to have Bond in the bed with her.
Like, and that is the one thing that keeps those scenes from being terrible, is that she is really into it. And I think Lois Maxwell is a national treasure. She's so good in what little screen time she has in this movie.
And we didn't get our hat toss.
Oh, I know. I mean, well, because we're too busy with Bond being a fucking creep elsewhere. Because we get a great bit where he's snooping around. There's an eerie shot of a dude with a bandaged face.
Yeah.
Guarding a door. Bond steals a grape from this dude's room, and it reminded me of Under the Cherry Moon. I wanted him to like just spit it out and yell, "Piss! Piss!" But he's been like real aggro with this nurse, Patricia Fearing, who's like this therapist, and plants a kiss on her, and she's not cool with it.
Well, when I texted you and told you I was watching Thunderball,
you go, "Oh my God, he's take it.
He's at it again," is what I sent. And Nathan goes, "Oh, being a creep."
I knew, and I'd forgotten this scene, but it's weird because part of the time she's playing flirty with him, but it's not okay. Like, there's this really great Mary Sue article about this movie in particular, which is a positive review, but they mention, I had to read this bit by Stitch for the Mary Sue, who said, "It's basically my biggest issue with the Bond series in a nutshell, how we see him con and coerce women into bed with him, and it's basically never a negative. In fact, James Bond is seen as this incredible stud of a lover, able to change a woman's mind with one kiss. It kills me." And that's a great point. And it's something that I love this movie later on for refuting through, like, we'll get to it later, but Volpe is basically just like, no, that's not how it works. You're a piece of shit. And I'm going to murder you. Yeah. But Nurse Fearing almost gets to murder him first because she straps him into this rack that's supposed to stretch out his joints.
This scene was so fucking funny.
It's so good. Like, so he's doing a little bit. He pretends the table's a motorcycle, and then she straps him into it. And Count Lippy sneaks in and speeds it up, and it's comical. Like, he's literally going like,
and they ramp up the film, and I think that's what makes it more
and that happens a few times in this movie where I'm just like, this looks like a Marx Brothers film. Like,
we're gonna talk about a particular scene that has some ramping up later.
Oh yeah,
just driving me nuts.
But Patricia shows back up to save him, and just kind of now she's into it.
Well, you wouldn't tell Dr. Wayne. Please, I'd lose my job.
Well, I suppose my silence could have a price.
You don't mean... Oh, no.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and that was another moment where Jenny was like,
yeah. But again, like, this guy, I don't know. Maybe it's because I've never been like a huge, like, oh, Sean Connery is a stud. I don't know.
Right. We talked about this a little bit on the last episode, and how, like, you know, the age he's at there is younger than I am now, and I still see him as a much older man than I am.
Isn't that wild?
In that movie.
There was this thing I saw on Twitter recently. Someone it was like a clip of a news report from a high school in 1983 or something like that, and it was literally like, we're not crazy, everyone in 1983 looks 40. Like, it's just automatically like.
And that's also something you notice in these movies too, being in the 60s and whatnot, like,
oh, they're dressed like my grandfather.
Yeah. and even, like, you know, the connotations we put around beautiful women or beautiful people in general. Yeah. Like, you know, all of the girls in these Bond films so far are voluptuous and look like they're adults and whatnot. And whereas something about the older we get, the younger people look for some reason.
Oh, really? Yeah. To me, it's just, it comes down to intention versus execution. And in a lot of these scenes, I feel like the intent is, as Volpe says later in the movie, you know, oh, he's irresistible, so everyone eventually, like, falls into his charms. And I'm like, but that's still dicey. Like, it's coercion. Like, it's not, it's very, I don't know. It's that Family Guy joke of where he says 50 no's and a yes means yes. Like, that's how this Bond actually behaves.
Right. And much like Goldfinger, we talked about the Pussy Galore scene in that one. And then this one, you know, luckily the beginning of the movie here is where we kind of leave it.
Yes, I agree.
And it goes into some interesting places later with the villain in the movie. But, you know, it's a lot like the Pussy Galore scene, and then with this one where it could have been acted differently in a way of, like, it seems as though he's forcing this kiss upon these ladies.
Oh, no, he fully does that. Like, she's in not cool with it. And then, you know, that she's trying to be professional. I mean, I think, again, intention versus execution. I think the intention is that she's trying to play it cool, but just can't because he's so attractive. But I think in execution, and also just because we've had 50 years removed from this movie, we can look back on it and say, that's fucked up. Like, don't do that. Like, what? Like, she's at work, dude.
Right.
It kind of like, I don't go into anybody's place of business and hit on them. Just don't do it.
And it reminded me of the scene in The Fifth Element when Chris Tucker, Chris Tucker is getting on the ship.
Mr. Rod, what? You're gonna have to assume your individual position. I don't want one position. I want all positions.
He's got a real Ruby Rod scenario here.
007 Ruby Rod. We're going to get Chris Tucker to play the next James Bond.
Felix, my man, I ain't got no fire.
Oh, the thing about Chris Tucker in The Fifth Element is every time he says, Kobe.
Oh my God, Kobe. Another one coming.
Kobe. In that scene, it's like, you could tell that she's kind of lusting over Ruby Rod and is okay with it in a sense, but it's like, this is my fucking job, dude. I'm working.
Right. And whereas this bit here feels like a power fantasy. It doesn't feel, it's very much from his perspective. We don't really get a sense that she's cool with it until she smiles at him almost at the end of the scene.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's very uncomfortable until suddenly she's cool with it. And even then I'm just like, that doesn't make it not weird.
Right.
I don't care how many mink gloves he wears.
Mink. It reduces the tensions.
Which, by the way, does it? Do I need to tell my therapist more mink, please? I don't know.
I'm going to get me a mink blanket to sleep in at night, so that way I'm not so anxious when I wake up in the mornings. James Bond.
Right. My weighted mink blanket, because I'm a millionaire. But this is the thing that I do appreciate, that it leaves this behind. And I think, if memory serves, he's not quite as terrible after this. It is really, man, it's tough. It is followed by one of my favorite sequences in the movie, though, which is we join Major Derval, who's killed by a man who has his face.
Yes.
Which I think is a really cool rear projection shot. The man with the bandages has been revealed. This guy's name's Angelo. He's a Spectre agent.
I really respect and like that, it's visual storytelling here. They're not having to tell us what's going on. We see the guy in the bandages. We get that explanation
way later. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we see the guy in the bandages, and then you see a guy who has the same face as the guy we're looking at. So it's like, oh, I can put two and two together here.
Right.
And this scene's good. You really get a sense for how Volpe, is that her name?
Yeah, Fiona Volpe, played by Luciana Paluzzi, who is, I think, so good in this movie.
Oh yeah, she's my favorite character in the movie. I love how cold and calculated she is. Mm-hmm. I love that she is evil to the end.
I wanted, like, watching it this time, I wanted her to be the main villain. Like, I wanted her to, like, double cross Largo or something. Like, I needed more of this character. But yet this agent is arguing for more money. He's like, now that he's had his face changed, he's like, I've been doing months of training. You've changed my face to look like this guy. I'm the only one who can do this operation. Last minute, I need you to pay me like $1 million more. And she's like, you know what? Fine. I'll talk to Blofeld. Like, and then again, we get this kind of mirror thing where he gets a Q scene. She's given him all his gadgets. She's like, this will call us. This is the thing that'll keep you from breathing in the nerve gas. This is, it's good. This is good stuff here.
Yeah. And again, I can absolutely respect a fairly simple plot. I was afraid from the beginning with the funeral and how everything kind of plays out. And then the weird spa scene, I was like, where are we going with this? But, I'm thankful that as we go through the movie, it's like, oh, they're fucking stealing nuclear bombs and they're going to blow something up unless somebody pays them. Like, and it was nice to have that this time around.
It is such a reliable plot that it becomes the plot of several Bond movies after this. Like, I swear multiple times we've kind of revisited this sort of idea, but it works. It's a good, like, it's a good frame to hang some fun adventures on. We get some really great day for night shots at this airfield as Derval is getting into this jet with all these other they're doing a test flight.
Yep.
And we cut to a really funny bit of the Spectre agents trying to sneak Derval's corpse into the spa, like where like Lippy's just like, come on, fucking let's go. Like it's just really funny to me. And Bond investigates. There's that shot of the shadow coming up behind him when he finds the corpse. I like all the quick action in this movie.
There's when this scene starts, when they're trying to bring the body in, like I started to notice a few things. Bond has always got that detective hat on. He knows something crazy's going on, from the guy with the bandages to all the shit that's going on here. I noticed the score here. I'm gonna play a little snippet of the score.
Yeah,
real quick.
Let's do it.
I love that little.
Oh yes.
And the only thing is, I think they play the score a little too much in certain scenes. Like this one goes on a little long.
It happens. There's a bit when they're underwater later where that gets kind of almost grating. But like I love how quick Bond is to just disarm somebody and take off. Like he he smacks this dude's arm, knocks the gun out of his hand, runs out into the hallway and just pulls a fire alarm and leaves.
Well, I mean, you've got the score there causing some tension with that little bit of music, but then like when he's in the room, he's taking the bandages off the face. You see the guy behind the wall with the gun, putting the silencer on. Like the tension they build in this scene is great. And then you also see the shadow of the guy in the window, like moving back and forth.
That's what I think was missing from Goldfinger. Like there's so much of Goldfinger that's just like what you see is what you get in terms of the action. This really leans into the dark, dirty espionage that From Russia with Love did, where there's a lot of people hiding around corners and in the shadows. And the first half of this movie, I was struck by how much I loved it. I think it loses a bit of steam as we go along, but there's some this is all the stuff I love. A lot of business in the jet.
I really like the jet scene for one, the double cross. Because you know that shit's coming.
You know it's coming, yeah.
And then when we get the plane and the plane sinking into the ocean,
it's a good miniature effect. Yeah.
And then the camouflaging of the plane once they get it underwater.
Love all of that.
I think all of that's really cool.
The water pouring in through the windows is like stresses me out. This is a good time for me to mention that I am terrified of drowning. Like I know that's a basic human thing, but Jenny is the same way, like buried alive and like drowning in a car in the river. Like those are her two worst fears in life. Water pouring into somewhere will fuck me up any time.
Yep.
And so this even though I'm like, this is the villain who just murdered 5 men and the water is pouring in, I'm just like, I hope he's okay. But this is also the first time we see an establishing shot of Largo's yacht, the Disco Volante, which is a fucking great name, Italian for flying saucer.
Has there been a band named this yet?
There has to be, right?
I would certainly hope so, but if not, Nathan, we're starting a fucking band.
But so Largo, what I do like about Largo is that unlike some of the other villains we've seen in this series, he gets his hands dirty personally.
Yes.
He goes down in the water with all the frogmen and goes to get the payload from this jet that has 2 nuclear devices on it. And Angelo realizes that his strap is stuck. He can't get out. Largo pulls a knife and it looks like he's going to cut him free. And instead he snaps the oxygen line.
Yeah.
And it's a great villain moment. He snaps the oxygen line, looks him in the eye, grabs the briefcase and swims away while the other guys bring the submersible for the bombs. Good. It's a really good moment.
It's a really good moment. And this is where we really start to get into all the water scenes that we're going to have in this movie.
So much underwater photography.
And And I mean, I noticed, they give a lot of recognition to that in the credits for this movie.
Yes.
Because again, like I said, I think they went into this one going, we were on water. Now we're going to go underwater.
Now we're in the water. Yeah.
And it works great here for me.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about the third act of the movie.
That's my thing. So my next note is I think the underwater photography is very impressive. And as always, I am trying to put myself in the frame of reference of an audience in 1965.
Yeah.
Which this must have been mind blowing.
Oh, I'm sure.
But
I can understand.
Me, it's so long. It's so long.
In like a scene like this where they're doing this procedural style of stuff of covering the plane up and all
that
of that.
I love where there's like actual action.
Yeah, that works for me. And I can understand, I can respect the ambition they went with this one in the third act.
This also had a higher budget than all three of the preceding films combined.
Right.
And it's all on the screen, but it is, some of these scenes are interminable. There's so many shots of people just kind of going this way and then grabbing this thing. But like you said, when there is a purpose to it and it's forward momentum for the plot, I don't mind it.
Right.
It does get to be a bit much. What I did enjoy was the bomb has handle like eggs stamped on the side of it.
Yeah, I noticed that.
It was I love that. Made me laugh really loud. I was like, if I designed bombs, I would also leave very similar notes. And this is also when we are introduced to George Pravda as Ladislav Kutza, who's the nuclear physicist who works with Largo, who doesn't really come to much, does he?
No, so much so that when you brought him up, I'm like, wait, who is this guy? Oh yeah, this guy.
Yeah. I mean, he's there to be a turncoat at the end, which again, I would argue should be Volpe's role, but whatever, we'll get to that. Largo learns that Blofeld was disappointed by Lippy. Who says send a message to the execution branch because he's like, if he hadn't picked this psychopath who demanded more money,
right,
he almost ruined our operation. And we cut to Bond the next morning, leaving in a hurry from the rehab clinic or from the spa.
I've watched the movie twice now, and I'm still a little confused about the car chase.
Oh, I got this.
Okay, I'm glad you do, because I wrote it down and I was like, the chase is a nice switch up, but I don't really understand. So explain it to me.
So Bond is tailing Lippy, who organized the murder of Derval and hid his body in the clinic. And he what I love is he takes off and he basically does what Michael Keaton does to what Bruce does to Vicky Vale in Batman 89, where he's just like, oh, I'm gonna be out of town for a few weeks. She says, what do you do for work? And he goes, oh, I travel. I'm sort of a licensed troubleshooter. And he takes off after Lippy. And there's a chase scene where Lippy closes in on him, and I think the chases in this movie have way better rear projection than we've seen so far in the series. But what makes me laugh is, so Lippy starts shooting at the car and James is kind of just bemused about it. He just sort of doesn't react. I feel like Connery's getting a little tired at this point.
Probably.
There's moments in this movie where I'm just like, you're not really as into this as you were.
Yeah.
But then, Volpe pulls up on Lippy and kills him, shoots him with a missile. And that was basically Blofeld saying, this guy almost screwed us, so kill him. I don't care what he's up to.
Yeah.
So it is literally like Spectre killing Spectre while they're trying to kill Bond.
Well, I mean, at this point, I know they know Bond was there and took, but Bond's not so much involved in what's happening just yet.
Yeah,
he's on his way to MI6.
All he knows is that he's been called in. Yeah. So
I found it I was taken aback a little bit when I found out that Volpe was driving the motorcycle.
Yeah.
And it's a nice little switcheroo where you think they're coming up on Bond and she takes him out. So I was a little confused
Great
by that.
explosion
I was
too. That explosion is great. I love the shot of her going, yeah, like just ditching the bike. It's pretty good.
Yeah, she's great. I mean, we'll get to more stuff with her later, but I really, she's the shining star in this movie.
I agree. But yeah, like you said, we lose our hat toss. James starts to do it, and then there's that fun little camera bit where it pulls over and the hat rack's in a new spot.
Yep.
And that's the kind of thing you can only do in the 4th installment of a franchise in 5 years. You know what I mean? Like everyone's just like, well, where's the hat toss? But yeah, Moneypenny informs James that every 00 has been called into this meeting with the Prime Minister.
I was a little like, ooh, we're going to see some, like,
I wish we had.
They go nowhere with that. I was a little disappointed in that.
According to the director, like at least a couple of the people in this scene are female agents too. He's like, if we had used any of the reverse shots of this boardroom, you would have seen like the first female 00 on screen, which I thought would have been really cool. M calls Bond out for being late now that we're all here.
That shot of Bond walking into the room and the fucking look that M gives him as he's walking to his chair. And then to counteract the look that Bond gives M when he finally sits down, I was like, these are two guys that have worked together entirely too fucking long.
Yes.
And the boss is just completely over his shit and is like, if I had anybody better, I would can this motherfucker in a second.
That's exactly what it is. If M knew that someone else could do the job, he'd be gone. And it also goes into that thing from like Casino Royale where, you know, Bond is like, 00s have a very short life expectancy, so your mistake will be short-lived. But yeah, we learned that Blofeld is planning to destroy a major city in either the US or the UK unless they pay their ransom. In order to let them know, you have to make Big Ben strike 7 times at 6 o'clock, which is a nice little bit.
I like the creativity of that.
It's a supervillain flex for sure.
Yeah.
But what I was thinking about this. What if they were like, he says either a city in either the US or the UK will be destroyed. What if the Prime Minister was like, I don't mind those odds. Do your worst to the Americans.
I kind of had a thought myself. I was like, well, what the fuck do they care what happens to the United States?
These guys are living on another planet because we meet Sir John, who gives us a presentation that requires this extra as hell map to open up on the wall next to him. Like a painting slides away. And then his whole presentation is like, here's all the area we know. We don't know where the bombs are.
I think once they took out Goldfinger, they just took all of his stuff from his lair and put it in MI6.
Yeah, we've commandeered his Dr. Strangelove room. I mean, but it literally, like, his presentation is like, we got nothing. And it required this big old gap. That's how you can tell that this movie is also just throwing money at spectacle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love it. I love the extraness of it, of course. But it's so funny when you think about it logically. M goes over the file for Project Thunderball. And this is when, like you said, it's a big old coincidence. James recognizes a photo of Derval as one of the men who died on the jet, supposedly. Mm-hmm. And he tells M, like, I don't want to go to Canada like you want me to. I'm going to go to Nassau to find Derval's sister. Yeah. And M says, is there any other reason besides your enthusiasm for water sports? Which is a very different line in Year of Our Lord 2022. Right. My next note is Bond's got a piss kink. M says
it wouldn't surprise me.
No, of course not. For Queen and Country, are you kidding me? M says, but I do love this moment. Like there is a respect there. As much as Bond pisses M off, he tells them, like, if 007 says he saw Derval's corpse, that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
You know, and even though they have only 4 days to stop a nuclear attack, he's like, I'm gonna go with my guy on this one.
Yeah, and that's what I love from what I'm seeing so far of the building of the characters and how they work together is like, I love this camaraderie they have with one another, where like they could care less for one another personally.
Yes.
But professionally, M knows this is my guy for the job.
Absolutely. And that's
And Bond's the same way. He's like, I respect this man. He's on the right side, and I'm going to do what he needs me to do. Like, I love that.
Yes. And that is the thing that I think we've talked about this a little bit off mic, but like a thing that bums me out about the Craig era, as much as I love those movies, is that like Bond quits every chance he gets in those movies. You know what I mean? Yeah. And there's a distrust, there. And I just, man, I love that this is just a matter of duty for both of them.
Yeah. Where you get those little nods of like Bond just wants to take a vacation and chill in these movies. Like the Daniel Craig movies, which are the only ones I've seen, really move into like, hey man, I just want to fucking sit on the beach and drink margaritas and get laid. I don't want to deal with this shit.
Well, Craig's Bond is also like, he carries a weight from murdering people, unlike this Bond, who is just like ka-chow, like harpoon. Isn't that funny? Like Bond is a fucking psychopath in this movie, and I kind of love it in some aspects when it comes to the action. But yeah, James goes snorkeling and meets Domino immediately.
Volpe is a villain. Like she's my shining star here, but I love Domino.
I agree.
And I kind of wish she had more to do.
I agree. Yeah.
Whereas this is kind of starting to be a running thing with the Bond girls, is I love them as characters. However, they don't get much to do.
Domino falls victim to sort of the Honey Rider problem, where I'm just like, this character on paper is fascinating to me, and she really does kind of get underserved by it. What's interesting is the producer's original choice for the role was Julie Christie. Can you imagine?
Julie Christie.
Julie Christie from Billy Liar, Dr. Zhivago, Fahrenheit 451, Hamlet, Dragonheart. Like, she's kind of a legend, and like she just didn't, they were like, we're fine. Like, there were a couple of different people approached, like Julie Christie, Raquel Welch, Faye Dunaway, and all of them kind of either turned it down or like it wasn't a good fit with the producers. Mm-hmm. And so but I think she's great in this. She's also dubbed. But
I mean, she's kind of the Tatiana, was very attractive. I really liked her character. Kind of the start of the traditional Bond girl there and From Russia with Love.
But also like super capable, is a spy in her own right. Like has the knack for espionage. And
where
Domino,
she is kind of my top tier. Domino would be like one right below her.
I love Domino. Yeah. Super, super interesting character who, like you said, she doesn't get a ton to do in this one. It's a very brief meeting, but he just wants to make sure that he's made contact. We're introduced to Paula, his partner, played by Martine Beswick, who was also one of the Romany girls in From Russia with Love. That's in the cat fight.
They're recycling them. Like
they are, yeah. I mean, but also they were like, she's great. We need to give her a more substantial role. And I like what we get of Paula here, but she is also another character that's sort of relegated to the one who has to die.
Yeah. Underdeveloped. Like, I would have been nice to kind of see her like romp and run with Bond a little bit. Like,
but she doesn't sleep with him, which I love. Right. I like that. It is strictly business, and I respect her. I mean, Bond gets a lot of hangers on in this movie. But Paula, what I like about Paula is she's giving us some shit. Like, she seems like one of the bros. Like, he says like, tell M I've made contact with the girl. And she goes, I'll tell them you've seen her. Like, you didn't make contact with her.
Even his exchange with her when he gets on the boat with Domino, and he's like,
you can take the service boat, right? Yeah, she'll take me back. I've got a meeting I got to get to.
And she's just like, yeah, sure. I'll take the fucking service boat, you prick.
Yeah. It's so good. But also, like, this is when we realize Bond's being watched. And how long did it take you to clock that this is our newest Felix?
I have a note that says, "Is this the third actor to play Felix thus far?"
In 4 movies? Yeah. And like, no disrespect to Rick Van Nutter, but my least favorite Felix.
Yeah, he's
like, there's nothing going on with this guy.
There's no charisma. It doesn't seem like he and Bond have really worked together before. Like,
well, and it's played like a mystery because this dude, if you watch closely, he's in the background of like 12 shots watching Bond from a distance. At one point, he's right over his shoulder, sometimes at night, always wearing those fucking cat eye glasses that Jack Lord had in Dr. No. But it is just like, it's played up like, oh, someone's tailing him. And that's something you can only do if you're recasting a character we're supposed to know. But it also means that Bond's ignoring him for the audience's benefit.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you look at it in context, like, it makes no sense because he would know who the guy is, but like, it's weird that that's how we're introduced to him in Dr. No, as he's following Bond around all mysteriously, and then the same thing happens here. It's just it's a weird little trope for this character.
A character he knows now, and we get our first mention of conch chowder, which is an aphrodisiac, apparently.
You've been studying up the wrong books, Mr. Bond.
And I love that she's not falling for it. I love her.
And we missed on the boat with the exchange with Bond and Domino.
I'm not with you.
You soon will be.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And she's just kind of rolling her eyes, like she doesn't dig it. And he kind of tips his hand and he calls her Domino. And she says, how did you know my name? And he says, oh, I saw it on your bracelet, on the bracelet you wear. And she goes, what sharp little eyes you have. And he goes,
wait till you get to my teeth.
Which is a creepy line, but I wish he had also added, they're so small. I have sharp little teeth also. Yes to a casino scene. Yes. Always happy to see a casino scene in one of these. And every time Bond and Largo get together, it's that dynamic that he has with Goldfinger that I really enjoyed, where I'm a bitch for a scene where both parties know what's up and they're just measuring each other. Even
the politeness that they have for one another when they're face to face.
Oh yeah.
And how he's just like, oh, come to lunch at my pad tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, one of my favorite exchanges in the movie is when he puts his hand on Bond's shoulder and he's like, would you like for me to show you around? And he goes, oh, I would love that. And he goes, I thought you would. Like, it's just like, we're alone. You don't have to act like this.
Yeah. When he gets to the house and they're having that exchange, it's almost like if you were to pan the camera down, they're like measuring each other's dicks. It's
of course
like,
yes, sword fighting.
These two are just going back and forth. It's hilarious.
Well, and Bond's not even like playing it cool. He like comes up and he goes, oh, because he beats him at cards and he goes, I thought I saw a specter at your shoulder. The specter of defeat, of course. Like, it's just a fucking, like, he has no chill. I've mentioned this on Silver Linings playlist. I don't know how any card games work. So
me neither.
Like, I'm literally going off of people's reactions throughout the, like, if someone goes, oh, and I'm just like, yeah, Bond. Right. Like, I'm like Abed on Community. I'm just looking for fucking cues. Like, but like, we're introduced. So Bond kind of takes Domino off to the side, and we get this weird wrinkle that's not properly explained in the movie. That Largo tells people, or sorry, that Domino tells people she's Largo's niece because she doesn't want to be called his mistress.
Well, I didn't catch that. I didn't pick up on that. I did hear when she says my guardian has me looked after when
she
they're
says
talking
that a couple times
pool.
too. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I don't know where I was going with that. So carry on.
No, it's an odd moment, but I do like this bit where they dance and she senses like a gentleness from Bond. Like, she's like, you hold me differently. And it's a nice little baseline for their romance.
This is what I want out of the Pussy Galore relationship.
I know.
Is, you know, like those, like, God, could you imagine the power couple of Pussy Galore and James Bond?
They'd never stop. They'd also, they would never, they'd take over the world for sure.
But I think, like this is a whole lot more reserved than that. And he's not, being forceful towards Domino, and
he's very chaste with her. And like, that's a thing that we really haven't seen from this Bond. It's something that's kind of explored in future movies that I like quite a bit, especially the Dalton ones. But there is like a sweetness to this scene, and it could be argued that he is just cozying up to her to get information, and that's very true at this point.
Right. Yeah, the scene later with the Volpe kind of puts that out there front and center. Yes. It's like, we'll get to that shortly, but there's a bit of sincerity here and it also gives Connery a chance to play some new levels that he hasn't really gotten to do. Maybe a little bit with Tanya in From Russia with Love, but like for the most part, it's something kind of new. What's not new is that hotel desk girls still love James Bond. We linger on this chick checking him out for a while in his little shorts. My note says the girl at the hotel was eye fucking him so hard.
Yeah, it's why we're 4 for 4 at this point with like checkout clerks being into James Bond.
Yep.
And instead of the long, hair on the door, like all this stuff, he's just got a fucking tape recorder hidden in a book now that lets him know if someone's in the house. And I love this shot of him checking the recording, listening to footsteps, and the camera the POV shot of him kind of tracking where the steps went.
Yeah.
And this is all really good.
And this is a very familiar scene, like you've brought up before, on how like the tropes that they continue to play in these Bond movies. Like we get another coming to the hotel, getting my key, going into the room, investigating stuff.
Someone's there. Yeah. I mean, it didn't happen so much.
And then finally we get
Felix getting punched in the stomach.
And yes, like that whole exchange there when he punches him and then throws him in the room. And then later you find out he's like, "You're about to say 007.
He goes, "Hey, 00." Like, and he punches him. He punches Felix in the stomach, burns this dude in the shower, and then just lets him go. And he says, like, tell your boss I always throw the little fish back.
Yeah. And while he's pouring a full fucking glass of alcohol, I don't know what kind it was, but it was.
He's gonna get smashed immediately after that scene. Yes. I hope right after the guy leaves, Bond sticks 2 straws in there, one for him and one for Felix. Like, I hope that they have a ritual.
Like, I want to see the shot of he and Felix sipping from the same cup.
At this point, he's like, there's no malteds here, so like. We get the reveal of Largo's place with sharks in the pool. Another great villain trope.
More influence for the Austin Powers movies.
Oh yeah, and he backhands this dude and kisses his Spectre ring, which is a great villain moment. Yeah. I kind of trashed Largo a little bit up top, but he has a couple of moments in here that I really do dig.
He's definitely not like you said, he gets his hands dirty. I respect that, but he's a lot like Goldfinger in the respect of like, I'm just not so interested in him as a villain.
I agree.
I'm definitely on board with you. Volpe is I wish she would have been the villain through the whole movie.
Yeah, and we get these great moments of this shot. It's almost like a corpse POV of as he's getting eaten by a shark. We see the guys above the water looking down as the blood pools in front of the camera. It's a great moment.
It's very reminiscent of like the Tarantino shots of like where he'll have a camera shooting out of a trunk looking at Vincent Vega and Samuel L. Jackson's character in Pulp Fiction, like that sort of style.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that was considered. I mean, I know Tarantino's a Bond fan, and we'll talk about another director later on who's a major Bond fan for sure. But now it's time for the roll call. We're gonna meet all of Bond's contacts. We got Paula, we got Pender, we got Felix. Q comes in with a Hawaiian shirt, and Bond says, "Oh no."
That is my favorite scene in the movie.
Me too.
And if you think M and Bond are over each other, Q is Q wants nothing to do with this guy.
If Q could shoot him,
he
would.
And Bond, it's one of those things where you can sense the tension between them.
Yeah.
And every response Bond gives to him is just this snarky little comment.
He's being so childish. He's playing with the propellers next to him. Q keeps making him turn it off. He's like, pay attention, 007. He has he shows him the Geiger counter. He goes, here's your Geiger counter, waterproof, of course. And Bond goes, but of course. And Q goes, like, he's like, fuck you, man. Like, I'm here right now. Shut up. Let me finish this.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go to the crawfish boil.
If you're just listening to the dialogue in this scene, you are not getting the full experience, because the physical,
Desmond Llewellyn rules in this scene.
The facial expressions that he's giving, the facial expressions Bond is giving, like, this is the funniest scene between the two of them so far in the series.
He says, like, I want you to take good care of this. And Bond goes, well, everything you give me is treated with equal contempt, of course. Yes. It's so, like, I have actual, like, crying, laughing emojis in my notes, which is not like... and
I absolutely love when he gives him the tracker. He's like, a harmless radioactive device. And Bond's like...
harmless? Yeah. Oh, yeah, because he has this little pill that he has to take that'll, like, allow them to find him, because it has, like, a little isotope in it.
What am I supposed to do with this?
Well, obviously, you swallow it.
As a matter of fact, you idiot, this is what you do with it.
The production designer Peter Lamont was asked if the rebreather could work, because he's given this little thing that can give him like 4 minutes of air at a time. And he was asked, like, how long could a man actually use this underwater? And he said, as long as you can hold your breath. Like, he's like, this is the one thing that isn't real. Like, there's no fucking way.
Which is absolutely something you would have saw Batman 66 Batman pull out of his utility belt.
The animated series Batman uses one multiple times. Like, that is straight up. He has like a little like face mask that he uses. Looks like the Shredder. But same thing. Bond immediately is just like, okay, time to do some reconnaissance. He swims over to the Disco Volante. And is followed by a dude with a harpoon gun. And this is the nighttime sequence where Largo wakes up immediately and just starts chucking grenades into the water by watching his bubbles, like his air bubbles. I think this is a good sequence.
I like that, once he starts throwing the grenades, like, at least they give you that shot of Bond, like, feeling the pressure of that, like,
there's shots of him just kind of wigging out or like getting tossed around. They're done through a combination of the actor kind of flailing, but also a lot of fun camera movements and shaky stuff. And this is good. Like, this isn't still another underwater sequence that goes a little too long, but it has some good bits.
And it doesn't help that this is a darker sequence, so I was having a little bit of a hard time making out some of the stuff that was going on.
Right. Like, it's not until he gets back with the film that I was like, oh, he's seeing a hatch. Like, that's not immediately clear to me that he's like trying to figure out how they're getting out of the Disco Volante to do all these things. But Bond makes it to the shore and is picked up hitchhiking by Fiona Volpe. And this is their first real meeting face to face. And is this your speed ramping scene that you were giggling about, or is it
hauling ass in that fucking Mustang, man?
She's a speed demon, and the thing that I love about her is she's just like picking up a secret agent with her fucking Spectre ring right there, like not even trying to play it cool, and literally plays everything off as like, oh, I'm also staying in this hotel. What a coincidence. Like, she's cool as a cucumber.
Well, the reveal of her being a villain is a cool scene, and we'll talk about it shortly, but it's like, it's one of those where it's like, she seems surprised that Bond has figured her out. Yeah. But it's like, he says, you're wearing the same ring as, like, maybe you evil villain should not wear your own fucking brand on your finger.
He's like, I boiled a guy a couple of years ago for working with you.
I'm not a friend of Spectre. I will seek you out. I will kill you.
I strangled one of you in a train. Yeah, and like after all of that, though, it's kind of frustrating that that whole mission was just to verify that they have an underwater operation. Like I know, as the audience, we know this. Bond has to find this out, but it still is just kind of, it feels like padding. A lot of this movie to me feels very padded. I feel like the plot is, like you said, it's simplistic, which gives you an opportunity to like, throw in all this fun stuff. But I think there's a solid like 20 minutes of this movie that can be kind of trimmed down on.
Where I'm happy that it's easy for me to follow in retrospect to the other ones we've been watching. Like, I think the thing about Goldfinger that turned me around on it, and still having the issues I have with it, was the reveal of the ultimate plan. Yeah. And that one, as Bond is figuring this out and Goldfinger is just sitting there shaking his head like, yeah, go ahead, you've got it. Yeah. This one is very much just like, like when you say padding, like we didn't need any of this scene. Like we know what's happening. Bond just needs to find this out. Right. And maybe it could have been a better scene with something like Goldfinger just sort of acknowledging that, Bond, you've got this figured out. Because, ultimately, this just gave us another underwater fight scene where we're going to have plenty of that coming up later.
We have plenty of that coming up later. We have plenty of scenes on the Disco Volante where those hatches could have been discovered. Like, again, like I said, it is very much like we need to see how Bond figures this out. Yeah. But as an audience member, it's almost a little frustrating to see Bond behind the ball. Like it's more fun to figure it out as he does. So maybe even just reordering some scenes. I don't know. But there's something about it that like kills the momentum for me. Same with the number. These shots. This movie's gorgeous. But there's a number of shots of the helicopter and outside the helicopter that are great. But man, we spend like 10 minutes of this runtime just watching Felix Leiter circle around the island.
I would have been a lot more taken into like, get me a scene where we get Bond and Volpe with each other, because that's what I'm ultimately interested in.
Yeah, I do like this scene between Largo and Volpe where they're arguing about like whether or not he should have attacked Bond. He's like, you could have like fucked up our whole thing. If you kill James Bond, they'll send more agents. They'll be on to you. And he just says like, he's Largo's very business. He is an enemy of Spectre. And so he needs to die. Yeah. They kind of like that single-mindedness.
But I do like that she continues to intervene and she's like, I'll take care of him when the time is right.
Right. Yeah.
And all of this with them at the hotel, and her seducing Bond for a change.
Yeah. There's some great stuff. I mean, we get to he goes to Palmyra, the Largo's estate. He's introduced to Mr. Vargas, who doesn't drink, smoke, or make love, which makes him the perfect killer. And the whole time, Bond's kind of big dicking Largo. He's like, I know about your lady. Like, he says, do you know a lot about guns? He goes, no, but I know a little about women. He's such a shit. There's the bit where he says, oh, I'd really like to try out this clay pigeon thing. And so can you call one for me? And Largo says, pull, the clay pigeon shoots out, and Bond just goes, oh, I don't know if I can. It's like, oh, it is easy. I love all of that.
But I love the scene with he and Volpe too, where like she's they're doing the clay pigeon thing, and she's a damn good shot. Like she's a strong female character here, and she's
a great villain. Like there's so much that these scenes are great because you also get the idea that, at first blush, it really does feel like she's one of Largo's subordinates, but it becomes very clear that they're definitely like same tier. Yeah. Like Blofeld has entrusted each of them with different parts of the operation, which I think is fascinating. And she clears out because she doesn't want Bond to know that they're connected yet, even though he's like, I'm not an idiot. Like, you're wearing a Spectre ring.
Yeah.
And I love the date with Domino during the parade. Felix comes up and, Paula gets taken by Largo's guys. And they cut. So Bond's reaction is, I'm going to cut power to the whole fucking island so that I can sneak into Largo's place. And Felix says something like, oh, it's going to take out the power for the whole island. He goes, I don't give a damn about the rest of the island, which it's pretty intense.
Yeah.
As is the fact that Paula has taken her own life with a cyanide capsule rather than talk during torture, which is revealed.
I actually missed that. I knew she had died, but I thought they had taken her out.
No, there's a line of dialogue off screen where someone goes, "Oh, it must have been cyanide" or something like that. And you know, she's like, she stayed true to the mission to the end. It's a bleak ending for this character, but really, I love that she goes out on her own terms instead of being a victim again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is, you know, like one of my biggest issues with Goldfinger. It's still not the best ending for this character that we've barely gotten to know, but it's again, it leans into the ugly side of espionage that I love about those first two.
At least there's some
Bond
sort
flicks.
of integrity to her character there.
Sure. And then Bond just starts blasting, like, which I love. I mean, he starts to sneak out and then just starts shoot. He shoots at like two guys, so everyone pulls their guns on each other because they can't see shit.
Yeah.
Largo has to yell like, he's got you shooting at each other. And then we get the fight by the pool, and Largo seals them in that in the, you know, the what It's a Wonderful Life pool. And this fight is brutal. When Bond like stabs this dude in the gut, in order to incorporate the sharks in this movie, there's so many shots of people bleeding out in the water.
Yeah. And I was a little confused. I honestly thought Bond had got stabbed there for a minute because underwater with the, I don't know if there were doubles there or not, but it looked like Bond to me that got stabbed. I was like, oh shit. And
that happens a few times in this movie where I am just, especially in the finale, where I'm just like, you could tell me literally anybody died in the scene and I'd believe you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Largo let a shark through into the next tunnel to the two connecting pools, and there's a great oh shit moment when Bond sees the shark next to him. And we get another, so much like the tarantula in the first movie. Connery is on the other side of plexiglass hiding from this shark, and they didn't have enough plexiglass to cover the whole area. So a shark actually did like butt its way around the corner and swam up to Connery.
Wow.
And he apparently like jumped out of the water, like freaking out. Supposedly when he got the script and they were like, so we have this sequence where you're going to be face to face with a bunch of sharks, his response was, not bloody likely.
There is a shot.
Which would be me.
There is a shot at the end of that when Bond goes through the tunnel into the main shark pool.
Yes. Yeah.
And when he gets out of the pool, if you watch, there's a fucking shark that is charging up to him very fast.
That. Oh shit.
And it almost looks like whoever was in that pool almost got bit by a goddamn shark.
They did. There are apparently a couple of moments where the stunt coordinator almost got eaten, like, or like it's, yeah, they were playing fast and loose with this shit. And
I have a question because, and this plays into what's happening later, but since we're talking about sharks, did they actually kill sharks here?
No, they had dead sharks. They had some like from like a local butcher shop or something like that. I did look this up.
There's a shot in particular where someone shoots a shark and blood comes out, and I was like, I'm not sure about. Yeah, I was like, they didn't just fucking kill a real shark, did they? Because that's kind of fucking.
As far as I can tell, because I did look into this, as far as I can tell, they did not kill a shark in this movie.
Well, good.
Whether or not a shark was injured, I don't know. I wouldn't discount it, unfortunately, because people were doing whatever the fuck they wanted in filmmaking in the 60s. I mean, I think we've talked about this. Tom Savini just straight up chopping a fucking snake in half in Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
So this is when Bond goes back to the hotel and sneaks into Volpe's room and finds her in the tub. And in one of my favorite shitty Bond bits, scamp Bond bits.
Since you're here, would you mind giving me something to put on?
And he hands her slippers. And she just kind of looks at him.
And she plays it really well.
Yes.
And then, you know, her getting out of the tub, seducing him, the whole conversation with him in the bed and the bars on the bed and all that stuff. Like,
oh yeah. She's like, oh, would you put me behind bars? And and then Bond is just like, well, I've got to go to the Junkanoo. Like, so it's time for them to get dressed and go out. And we get Bond pulling a Jack Burton where he opens the door. It's just like,
We may be trapped.
yeah, that I love this scene. I love that he just graciously when he sees her with the gun, he turns around, opens the door. Friends of yours,
puts him in. And she tells him, like, you think you can do whatever you want. And he goes, oh.
My dear girl, don't flatter yourself. What I did this evening was for king and country. You don't think it gave me any pleasure, do you?
And she essentially refutes the pussy galore problem, right?
Yeah.
Like, she tells him flat out, like, I'm not going to change who I am. You're not good enough at sex to turn me against my my group. Like, it's a great monologue that she has, and I think she sells every second of it while holding a gun in his face.
You just reminded me of, have you ever listened to John LaJoy?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
There's one of his songs where it's like, girls like to have sex with me because I'm really good at sex.
At sex.
And it's like,
yeah,
that's James Bond's theme song right there.
It's like, I did it. I've done it. Yeah, it's a good moment that kind of just like shits on the whole Bond trappings, you know, and it's just like, you're not as good as you think you are. I'm still working for Spectre. I'm not going to change. I'm not going to change my mind. And the thing that does change their mind is Bond tries to set them on fire.
Yeah, like what would you call this? Like an inside out Molotov cocktail sort of scenario.
Yeah, because a drunk guy comes up from the Junkanoo and he's holding in a liquor bottle, and Bond makes him spill as Volpe is lighting a cigarette. But the effect they use is like, it's more like a smoke bomb as opposed to like catching something on fire. But that tequila must have been 400 proof, because right. it's like a miniature Hiroshima. Like, it's a little Thunderball right there.
It's like
that's what it is.
It's like a chemical reaction as opposed to just lighting something on fire.
But and Bond runs for it, but he's gotten shot in the leg. And I think this is a really great bit. Like, Bond is hobbling, he's scared, he's sweating. She follows his blood trail, like she notices it and is tracking him. I gotta pull up the timestamp so you can drop it here. It's a really good chase, but there is a quick shot of a dog in the middle of the parade who is not having it.
I have a question though. Is this the first time we've seen Bond get injured on screen? Like,
no, I mean he's been roughed up and stuff, but this is the first time I've ever
blood on Bond. Like, I know, like, because at the beginning we're talking about how the widow went to town with him with a fire poker, and
right.
Like, I love that whole exchange with him and her, and there he says that, and
funny looking bruise, full.
A poker, in the hands of a widow.
I'm surprised. I'd have thought you were just the type for a widow.
Oh, not this one. He didn't like me at all.
Yeah, this is probably the most dire we've seen for Bond in terms of injuries. Like, he does get shot in From Russia with Love, right? Like, that's when he gets patched up at the Romani camp, or is he stabbed?
I can't remember now.
But he definitely takes a beating. But like, this is the first time I've kind of felt worried for him in these movies, where like he seems he is on the run. And it's another reason why Volpe rules, because this is a great chase. He beats it over to a club bathroom. This whole section feels very Dr. No. I mean, a lot of this movie does in terms of like set and or in terms of setting.
Might have something to do with Terrence Young coming back.
Sure. And also he tries to get this girl to dance with him, and Volpe cuts in, and I love this sequence where she's just kind of studying him. Every time it cuts back, she's just sort of trying to figure out what his game is as she looks into his eyes, and he's playing naive. He's like, I enjoy my dancing. And I think the editing in this sequence
with the bongos and the cut to the gun, and
kudos to Peter Hunt, the editor on this movie, because he's doing, this is a very modern feeling moment. Cutting between the dancing to the bongos getting progressively more erratic to a gun coming out of the curtain, and then finally the gun goes off, he turns Volpe and she's shot in the back. And Bond's scampiest moment in the movie, he drags her corpse over to a table and sits her down next to some people.
One of my friends sits this one out. She's just dead.
Those poor people.
Yeah.
When he's long gone when they realize there's a corpse, right? That's fucked.
It reminds me of that scene from Commando when they're getting on the plane and he tells the stewardess, he's like,
don't disturb my friend. He's dead tired.
Oh, sure. Yes. I mean, so much of that and The Running Man are built around these kind of puns, right?
Yeah, for
he
sure.
had to split. What's the one in Eraser where he just says they had to catch a train when he leaves a car full of people in front of a train.
I actually have never seen Eraser.
I think you'd enjoy it. It's goofy, but it's a good throwback.
I have it on Blu-ray and have never sat down and watched that one.
Yeah.
It's weird, man. As big of a Schwarzenegger fan as I was as a kid, there was a certain point where I just stopped. And I think it was around Twins when he started getting into comedy.
Oh, sure. That makes sense.
And I love Twins.
Not a big Jingle All the Way guy.
No, not really. I still watch it every other Christmas or so, but
oh wow.
Yeah, like I've never seen Last Action Hero either.
Oh, I have a soft spot for that one too.
And I'm sure we'll be talking about it on the regular show at some point. And I'm anxious to watch it, but I do remember catching bits of it on cable and not really being into what was going on there. But that was really one of the first accounts of the meta aspect of movies.
I think it might hold up better now. Actually, I haven't watched it in a few years, but
right.
I'd be interested to give that one another shot.
So, but there's a lot of later Schwarzenegger stuff that I'm not super familiar with.
That's season 2 of this podcast.
We've got too many seasons at this point. We've got Star Trek.
No
we've got
sure. So we cut. So at this point, the government's pretty sure they're going to have to pay up the ransom. They've already made Big Ben strike so that they can tell Spectre, we're on board.
Is it M? Is it M in the room when they're getting everything, the diamonds together and everything? He's just pissed that they're gonna have to pay up. He's just so pissed
give
off.
Bond time. He's gonna do this. He's got it. And luckily, Felix mentions that they're flying over the Golden Grotto because Largo has mentioned that his sharks are Golden Grotto sharks. This is when they shoot a shark to distract the other ones. So Bond can go down, find the camouflage jet. I love these sequences. There's some great eerie bits of the sharks wiggling through the netting, some extreme close-ups, Bond swimming among these corpses.
I'm okay with this. However, this leads into our third act or final battle of this movie. And it's a slog.
I agree.
And again,
thankfully we get underwater sex before that. Because Bond goes to meet up with Domino to tell her about that he found, that her brother was killed by Largo. He's got her brother's watch and his dog tags, and he meets her in the water. They embrace, float down behind a reef, and then there's a poof of bubbles as they bang underwater. It's a pretty funny moment that I think is meant to be funny.
I hope we didn't frighten the fish.
But she's ready to play him off and or write him off, play it cool. He's like, oh, I have to leave soon. She goes, of course you do. And then when he tells her the bad news about her brother, he feels the need to put on some fucking cool shades first. It's a very weird moment. He's like, Largo killed your brother. He's David Caruso in CSI Miami.
It's a long story, and it involves your friend Largo.
It's a weird bit, and Vargas is sneaking up on them, and he just straight up kills him with a harpoon.
Yeah.
And these are the last bits of action that I really dig before we start to get into this final act, because he pops his little radioactivity pill, steals a frogman suit, but he doesn't. Did this drive you crazy? He doesn't tell Felix and the rest of the gang about his plan. Like, they have no idea that he's going to confront Largo, because at one point Felix goes like, so where's James? Yeah.
And then, after all that shit goes down, he's just sitting in the cave, like waiting for someone to pick him up. And it's like, I don't know. It was a little weird watching all that shit go down.
Yeah.
And then I'm hanging on for the movie for most of it. And, since we're getting towards the end, like the first watch I had of this, I wasn't super impressed with it.
Sure.
To be honest, like I usually, when I'm going to watch the movies for the show, I will sit down and start taking notes immediately when I'm watching. And this time Jenny and I sat down and watched it, and I was like, I'm just going to watch it this time. I'm not going to take any notes. I'm going to take everything in. And that probably hurt my first watch on this one, because knowing we were going to be recording today, I watched it again because I could not remember anything from this movie from watching it 3 days ago.
It's a lot of, again, I mean, the underwater photography is impressive, and it probably played like gangbusters to an audience in 65. But here it just feels, it's so slow. It's so hard to tell who is who during a lot of this. I mean, we get a fun bit where there's like one fake wall after another. There's a fake wall that has a crank inside that then opens another hatch that then has the mini sub in there.
Yeah.
And the score is really great in this, but there's a lot of people just kind of milling around where I don't know which one Bond is until one guy hilariously goes, like when he notices Bond.
And the biggest thing about all these underwater fights is just the taking off the goggles.
There's a lot of taking off goggles. There's a lot of cutting lines.
Yeah. And again, like I can appreciate the ambition here. I can appreciate the spectacle they were going for with this.
Yeah.
But I think if anything, this final act of this movie kind of proves that like maybe underwater isn't the best place for this looks like it should be like a showdown at the OK Corral between two gangs.
Yeah.
And with it being underwater with all these mini submarines and boats and all this stuff, and the fact that, it's not a gunfight, it's a harpoon fight.
That there goes Silver Linings pitch for Crank 3, where he's got to stay wet the whole time, which is a bummer. But yeah, no,
you give me a sequel to Crank with Jason Statham doing some shit underwater, I'm probably on board with that.
And he can talk like in Aquaman, like he doesn't actually have to breathe or anything.
And he fucks a fish.
Of course he does, while Willem Dafoe watches. But there's the stuff during this sequence that is the most interesting to me is all the stuff on the Disco Volante. There's the confrontation between Domino and Largo, which is Largo being very scary. I mean, there's this great shot of him standing in the foreground, and there's her reflection on the ceiling as she's like in the bed, and he tells her, he like holds up like a lit cigar, I think, and a handful of ice.
This for heat, these for cold, applied scientifically and slowly. Very, very slowly.
Do not live in hope, my dear. There is no one to rescue you, which is a terrifying villain line. It's a really good line, but it is, it's just, he's immediately kind of taken away from this, which again, I like that Largo gets his hands dirty, but like harpoon fight. I just, all I know here is to root for the oranges. Like that's really what it is. I feel like when I watched anytime I have to watch a sports game, I'm just like, which color am I supposed? A sports game, said the fucking nerd. Sports game, sports ball.
I'm gonna go watch the sports ball now.
I'm gonna go. Hey, the oranges are playing today in the sports is. Bond. I mean, I don't know. There's a couple of fun bits. Bond jets through and yoinks some dudes' masks off. There's a bit where he like rocket harpoons a hatch down on some dudes.
Yeah, that's fun. Like all the stuff with the mini sub and how he's doing all of that, like how he kind of swoops in and sort of does his own little thing while this battle's going on.
Yes.
I love I actually really like all the parachuting people into the water.
That's a good stunt. Yeah, I like that. I like the grenade underwater. That's a good, and the sound design throughout all of this is very good. You know, I mean, it's not easy to create interesting Foley effects that sound muffled in a fun way. And, you know, all the people who, or it's, you know, knowing the Bond movies, it's probably two guys ADRing a bunch of like over all these fights. There's a gnarly shot of a harpoon that goes through a dude's arm.
Yeah. I like that shot.
And I also like the one close up of the crab that's just like, get me out of here. Like he's just trying to get away from the fight. But like, yeah, it's really hard to follow, right?
That crab's running back. He's like, you won't believe what's going on. Right?
I met James Bond. Yeah, I don't know. There's
but once we get James back on the boat, this is where I was talking about the speed ramping was driving me crazy. Because all of that projection out of the boat and the way they're ramping it up, and it's like
it's pretty goofy.
No boat would feasibly be doing anything that they're trying to portray here. Now, again, this was 50 years ago. They're doing the best they can.
I do like that the Disco Volante is like the Aston Martin. Like he's like, send smoke. Like they start shooting smoke. They do the little bat bullet thing from Batman Returns where they like lose half of the shuttle and like go,
yeah.
He's like, and those poor fuckers on the back half have to fend for themselves. They get tore up. Like I actually felt really bad for those Spectre agents in the back half of the boat. But we really do lose Bond in this finale because Felix kind of calls in the National Guard.
Yeah.
And that's all the people we're watching fight, really. I mean, Bond gets that fun little bit with the grenades and the harpoon, but like for the most part, it does feel like we're just watching two armies duke it out for a little bit. It's the same problem I have with the finale of Goldfinger, where I'm just like, you went for scale, and I prefer when it's, I don't know, I like sending the one man who can take care of business. And
where you've got all the shit going on with Goldfinger and everything up top. I'm more interested in what's going on between Bond and Oddjob.
Exactly. Yes, you know, 100%. And this is when the Doc becomes a character again and decides to free Domino to save his skin. He's like, he's gone mad. You'll have to tell them that I saved you. And she plays this scene so well. Domino is in a daze. She doesn't really want to talk. Like she's just trying to get out of there. And she ultimately kills Largo. I mean, Largo gets the drop on Bond, but Domino puts a harpoon in his back and looks at Bond and says, I'm glad I killed him.
Yeah.
It's a fucking good moment.
Yeah.
It's really good. And Bond's like, you're glad. Like he was about to shoot me. But yeah, the Disco Volante crashes, and we kind of get a repeat of the ending of Dr. No for a second, right? Where they're in the life raft. But this is when Lucius Fox arrives and says the CIA used to have a program called Skyhook.
Skyhook, Skyfall, is there a connection there?
This is actually Skyhook. They used it. Like this was a real thing. And if this and a movie coming up don't show you what a huge Bond fan Christopher Nolan was, like it's kind of comical. I mean, you got like that kind of rear projection shot or whatever of them getting like you, but it's fun. It's a fun ending that I completely forgot about.
It's fun, but highly improbable. I mean,
sure.
It's the helicopter, right? It's not a plane,
right? And it's the plane with it's got like the, you know, they stole my balloons kind of thing on the end of it. So,
but in reality, this fucking hook would have just like snapped their backs. They would have had a very Gwen Stacy moment going on.
Oh my God. Yeah, for sure. I mean, overall thoughts, Thunderball.
Like I said, the first watch was a little rough.
And
I didn't retain a lot of what I watched. Watching it this time, I got a lot more out of it. It has its moments. I think the third act brings it down quite a bit for me.
I agree.
And again, I can respect what they were going for, and while they did it, I don't think it really worked all that well.
Yeah. This is one that I had a lot of fun with this that I didn't expect. I still had the same problems that I had before, but I had forgotten really about how great the first half of this movie is. I think it really does take a dip in that third act. And there are people who love this movie, who would rank this as their favorite. And I don't think you're necessarily wrong there. It's just the stuff that works for other folks in this one doesn't really come through for me.
Yeah.
I think Volpe is a fantastic villain. I think Domino is a great love interest. But yeah, this one sits very squarely in the middle of the pack as far as the Bond movies go, the classics go.
Yeah, I mean, going into this one right after Goldfinger, I would say those two are kind of the yin and yang of one another. Whereas Goldfinger has a quite like sort of just like we're going by the numbers sort of first and second act, and then really, really captivates me in the third.
Really ramps up to that popcorn entertainment. Yeah.
And like with the reveal of what Goldfinger's actually doing in Goldfinger and all of that, like that's where that movie turns around for me. And this one, I'm very happy and very entertained by what's going on in Act 1 and Act 2. Act 3 comes along and it's just kind of like
kind of underwhelms you.
Yeah. But I mean, those two are similar in those two ways, and the fact that like both have very strong female characters. I don't like what happens to the character in Goldfinger. I dig where we're going with Domino here.
Yes, I agree.
So like, it's the yin to Goldfinger's yang, and but
it course corrects in a lot of ways, and then in some ways it kind of takes a step back, I think, which is, it's an undisputed classic, but it's not one that I return to very often. But I still think like if you're watching the series for the first time, you got to, right? Like it's kind of it's undeniably part of it, and something that I don't know, like the later movies will build off of Thunderball in fun ways in terms of just structure and how they approach action and character through lines. Coming up, we have a movie that I have a affection for that I know is exceedingly problematic in some ways. So I'm very excited to sort of cue that one up. Josh, if you had to guess what You Only Live Twice is about, what would you say?
I think James has a very close call in a situation where the powers that be think he may be out for the count, but he's working covertly because they think he's dead.
I like that.
That's all I've got on this one so far. Just judging upon the title.
Yeah,
we'll see what happens.
It's a good guess. We'll find out next time. In the meantime, I guess this is your feed. Do you have anything to plug?
We're doing a lot of cool stuff with VHS Files this month. Going to be doing a lot of giveaways. We have a Blu-ray that we're going to be giving out as well. One that's
nice.
We're going to be giving. Well, I won't spill the beans on that just yet, but we do have some giveaways we're doing on the main show this month.
Cool.
And it's going to be fun. Other than that, I don't have much. Nathan, do you have anything else going on?
Yeah, man. So Silver Linings Playlist is taking a season break right now. Our finale back in December was John Carpenter's The Thing, which is a super fun episode. Oh, That's a Scary Movie, podcast I do with my best friend Ashley, is still going. We've covered most recently James Wan's Malignant and 2002's The Ring, which was really fun to revisit. I was pleasantly surprised.
You guys are cranking out the episodes over there.
Yeah, man, it's been fun. I mean, we banked up a few because as this drops, the day this drops, I will be in Boston visiting some friends because we're gonna do it up and see Batman in style.
Nice.
And also AIPT Comics podcast, where we have a new episode every week. We interview comic book creators and cover the latest news and reviews for comic books, our favorite books of the week. Listeners of the VHS Files will probably be very excited because we recently interviewed Earl MacRouch and W.D. Richter, the screenwriter and director, respectively, of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension.
Nice.
W.D. Richter also wrote Big Trouble in Little China, my favorite movie of all time. And he was
one of our favorites. Yes,
absolutely. And he was baffled to hear me say that. But that was a fun chat. So that was a couple episodes back. That it's worth a listen for sure.
I also want to give you a round of applause.
Oh,
our boy got a quote on the front of the new Venom trade.
That's right. The new Marvel's Venom Volume 1 Recursion has a quote from one of my reviews on the cover. I also just got quoted on the cover of Sinister War, Spider-Man Sinister War. So that was pretty cool. Not my name's not on there, but AIPT is on there. So it's good enough for me. Very happy about that. Yeah, man. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, if anybody wants any recommendations for reading based on this podcast, the Ninjak series from Valiant Comics is basically what if James Bond was also a ninja. So go check that out. It rules. It's written by Jeff Parker, who's written some really exceptional James Bond comics.
And while Nathan is the resident comic book guy who reads and does reviews of comics and everything, I, as a comic book fan, am just happy that Saga is back out.
Oh yeah, man. I got to catch up. I waited because I realized it was going to be a long time before I could finish it. Mm-hmm. And then I just have actually fallen behind. So got to do that.
It is back. And anybody who reads Saga, I have to say, Saga is back. I mean, that's all you can really say.
That's good. Love it.
It's a double issue for the first issue back. And I'm loving it. I'm so happy it's back. It's probably, I would probably venture to say, my favorite comic of all time.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I definitely need to catch up.
I love me some Brian K. Vaughan and some Fiona Staples. So
me too.
Happy to have them back in my life.
Heck yeah.
So, well, that's going to do it. That was it. That's Thunderball. That's it for this month. We're going to be back next month with You Only Live Twice.
Yeah.
And we'll see if my guess was correct. But until next month, Nathan,
stay shaken.
Never stirred.